All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Hey, everyone, joining in. I love it. If you can turn your videos on, if possible, that's great. Be able to engage with you too. All good if you're eating lunch or dinner or something like that, but love to have those videos on. You'll notice you're on mute. Honestly, I'm so excited about today. We've got some really amazing plans for today's summit. And this is day one of the Creative Business Summit. So just as we gather, and we've got more people joining us, I want you to just pop in the chat where you are in the world and what you do creatively, right? Where you are in the world and what you do creatively. Amazing. Welcome those joining us. As we join, pop in the chat where you are in the world and what you do creatively. Amazing. I am from New Zealand. Those of you that do not know where my accent is from, I'm originally from New Zealand, currently based in Richmond, Virginia. Been here for a few months already. We're a US based business, so most of our clients are in US and Canada. Occasionally, people outside of there as well. That's where I am right now. But yeah, pop in the chat where you are currently in the world, and what you do creatively, just as we do a bit of gathering. Amazing. Okay, so honestly, I'm just so excited to have everyone here. And honestly, it's going to be a really awesome 3 days. So today is day one of the Creative Business Summit. Just to start off with, I'm going to be giving you just a bit of an overview of the plan for today and the next 2 days. So this is a 3 day Creative Business Summit. Day one today is all about offerings. So we're really going to be talking about the different products and services to really focus in on. What you can do to start if you haven't started actually your creative business, or even if you have, what could you do to expand what you're doing or even focus in on what you're doing around your offerings, right? Your products and your services. So that's day one. We're going to be diving right into that today. Day two is all about mindset, right? Mindset is absolutely crucial for growing a long-term sustainable creative business, right? Abundance mindset. We're going to be talking about confidence. We're going to be talking about shifting to that mindset of a creative business owner, right? Which I think it kind of sounds scary. Like, what, a creative business owner, right? I don't know. Is that me, right? Like, that's something that comes up for a lot of people. We're going to be digging right into this, really helping you to see how many opportunities there are for you, and that you need to work on things like confidence and abundance mindset. So we're going to be diving right into that. That is going to be day two. So that's tomorrow, Tuesday, same time as today's one, right? So same exact time, same link, and all the good things. Day three, so that's Wednesday, it's going to be all about pricing. Honestly, this is just something that lots of people struggle with, is how to actually get the pricing right in a creative business, right? And it's kind of important because, right, if you get it wrong, you can't build a long-term sustainable business. So this is incredibly important as pricing. So that's what we're going to be doing on day three. That'll be on Wednesday. Once again, same time. What I'm going to do now is just give a bit of a background, a bit more about myself before we dive in. Now, there's a few people here already. I can see that I'm like recognizing some names, which is fantastic. Absolutely great to have you all here, and some people that I don't know. So those of you that I don't know, my background is that I had my own creative business for 11 years, was in the live event space. And basically during that time, I got very involved in the education side of creative business, right? So I did a lot of teaching with universities and public programs for a whole number of years. It was all next to myself running my own creative business. And then eventually that evolved into full-time coaching to help visual creatives to grow their business. So these days, most of our clients we work with are based in the US and Canada, and they're very much in the visual creative space. Visual creative space is also kind of wide, but typically we tend to work with illustrators, graphic designers, photographers, muralists, very much people in these visual creative spaces, and some people in between those spaces as well. And effectively, the people we work with are broken into three groups. Group one are like, hey, I'm early stage, I'm trying to get started, I'm trying to get things moving. Maybe you've got a day job, or maybe you're caring for young family members, right? And you want to really build this thing to a sustainable full-time income, right? So that's group one we work with. Group two are kind of more like, hey, I'm doing it part-time or full-time already. I'm running my creative business full-time, but it needs to be more sustainable, right? I'm feeling maybe a bit overwhelmed and not earning the revenue I want to earn, and I really need to build this up. to be more sustainable. Group three are kind of like people that are like, hey, I've been doing this for 10, 20, sometimes even 30 years, but they also want more sustainability, more revenue in their business as well. And sometimes they want to diversify their offerings. So that's a bit about the amazing work that we do, obviously over at Flamboyant Entrepreneur. Now, I am really excited because today and during the summit, we are going to be giving away some freebie calls. So this is something where what we're going to be doing is giving away some free clarity calls with Paul and Alyssa from our team. They're coaches on the team. Paul's actually with us today. Alyssa will be joining tomorrow as well. And we're going to be giving away some free calls. So that will be at the end of this call. So make sure you do stick around for that. It's something we would love to do more of. We can't do it very often, but we're excited to get some clarity calls on the calendars and get you all some more support and clarity as well. So today is about action, right? Look, it's lovely to connect with you all here. It's lovely to jump on a call and run a bit of a training, but we've got to make sure we go beyond the theory, right? Lovely to learn, knowledge is power, all good stuff, but we need to actually make sure you're taking action on that knowledge, you're implementing that knowledge. So we're going to have things quite actionable today. So do make sure that you've got either a physical notepad or a document on your computer ready, because you're going to be wanting to take some notes, but also we're going to be getting you to do some activities today as well as you work through this, because ultimately you taking action on some of these ideas is what is going to move you forward. This is actually a big part of what we do on our coaching programs as well, is yes, knowledge, what you need to focus on and how to focus on it, and the latest tactics and tools, but it's also ultimately about taking action. And we know from coaching many, many people over a whole number of years that ultimately it's taking action that will move their business forward, right? Helping them to actually implement the things that they're learning as we go as well, right? This is really, really important, and it's going to be really, really important today during this summer workshop as well. So do just make sure you've got a notepad or document. Welcome to those of you that have just joined us as well. Feel free to pop in the chat where you are in the world and what you do creatively as we get underway. Cool, awesome. What I would love everyone to do, I want you to type into the chat, grow, if you want to grow your business, right? If you want to grow your creative business, can everyone type in grow into the chat? Build a bit of energy as we get into it. Amazing. Who wants to grow the business? Type grow into the chat. There we go. Grow, 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 grow. I love it. Amazing. Okay. So what we're going to talk about first is who is this offerings workshop for, right? Today's offerings workshop, we're going to be talking about really offerings in your creative business. So who's it for? Well, it's for people that are starting out in their creative business. It's for people that are already in creative business and maybe you want to diversify your offerings. And it's also for people that have been doing this for a long, long time and maybe want to offer something new in their creative business, right? There is lots and lots of different ways you can implement the different things we're going to take you through today, but that's effectively who that is for today. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the difference between a hobby and a business, right? And I think this is a really, really important thing when it comes to a creative business, right? Because ultimately, if you're talking about a creative business, this is not a hobby, and there's a difference. Now, to be clear, there is nothing wrong with having all of these visual creative things as a hobby. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a beautiful thing. Now, if we're going to talk about it as a business, and often it will be a hobby that evolves into a business in this space, well, some things change. And one of those big things that changes is that you need to start to get really clear on creating value for people, right? So how does the creative skill that you have actually create value that other people are willing to pay for, right? Because if you don't create value, well, it's just a hobby. If you don't create value that other people are willing to pay for, it's just a hobby. So, really often what happens is the start of a creative business can be a hobby, it can be a passion, it can be a purpose. So that's actually, a great starting point, is to really understand and get excited about what is your purpose, what is your passion, what are the things that you're excited about. We hear again and again people saying, oh, I just want to create art, right? Right, that's a beautiful thing. And if you want to be able to create art full time, or you want to create full time, then that's probably a creative business, right? Because most people can't just create full time and it not be a business, right? Because you need to actually fund your life. You need to fund your own livelihood, right? So what we're going to do first, I want everyone here to do a brainstorm around what you are passionate about, right? Because this is going to help us lead to thinking about the offerings that you could focus on or you could expand into. Right, so I'm going to actually set a minute timer. I know that's not very long, but I want everyone here to write down some things on their piece of paper, on their document. You don't need to do it in the chat. What are you passionate about? Right, so we're going to set a minute timer. Write down, and this is everything you can think of. It could be non-creative things as well. What other things that you're passionate about? This is just a bit of a brainstorm. I'm going to start my minute timer. There we go. Passions lead towards things that you can offer, right? But write it all down. What are you passionate about? You could be passionate about lots of different things. You could be passionate about painting or drawing or creating. You'd be passionate about connecting with communities. You'd be passionate about spending time in nature. Right? Write anything down that you can think of. See if you can get some ideas down. Anything that you're passionate about. Does not have to be related to a creative business. These are just things in life that you are passionate about. Let's give everyone a little bit more time on this one. What things are you passionate about? Amazing. And this is an activity you'll be able to come back to later, but we're going to jump into the second brainstorm, right? The second brainstorm I want you to do is I want you to brainstorm what you could do that other people would value or might value. And so what are the things that you can do that other people might value and pay you something for? And once again, it doesn't have to be related to creative business, right? So just writing down anything that you could do that people could pay you for. Even if you're not that excited about doing this thing, you might be like, well, I enjoy walking in nature, but I don't know if I would want to be a guide, guiding other people in nature. Well, you can still write it down. It's still something you could do. And so don't worry too much about overthinking that you have to enjoy it and you'd love to offer that thing. We're just going, what are the things that you could do that people might value? How could you use your time, your expertise, your energy to create value for other people related to creative business or outside that? I'll just give everyone another minute on that one as well. Remember, it can be non-creative stuff as well. Write it all down. There's no right or wrong answers. Bit of a brainstorm. A little bit longer. What else can you write down on your brainstorm list of things that you could do that can offer value? Other people might spend money on, they might pay you for. Awesome. Once again, these are both really short activities right now because I want to keep moving, but these are things you could come back to as well. Now, ultimately, the reason we run that short brainstorm is because often those are the things that can drive what you are actually offering long term, right? What are the types of products and services you can offer, are often related to your passions and related to the things that you can offer that people will value, right? We need to see the crossover between those different areas. Now, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be taking you through a few different concepts based on what we see. Now, the really interesting thing that we get to do is we get to work with lots of different people, lots of different visual creatives, so that we therefore get to see trends. right? And we get to see what works, and we also get to see what doesn't work, right? This is really, really interesting. And what we've noticed is that to have a long-term sustainable business, to reach the goals that you have in a creative business, you actually need to have a core focus on what we call valuable offers. Right, we're going to be diving right into what a valuable offer is today, because this is a really core part of this offerings training is valuable offers. Now, we define valuable offers as anything that you can charge $300 plus for, right? At least $300. Now, we've got people in different parts of the world. It's totally fine. You can use 300 USD, Canadian dollars, New Zealand dollars, Australian dollars, pounds, euros. That's all totally fine. Use about 300 in any of those currencies. It's fine, right? So the focus here is that a valuable offer is something that you can offer for at least 300. Now, notice I say at least, more even better, right? You can sell something for $500 plus, $1,000 plus. This is an individual sale, by the way. It's usually with an individual client. If you can sell something for $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, oh my goodness, amazing. But what we're saying is that we really see to be long-term successful and sustainable as a creative business owner, you need to have a core focus on things that are $300 plus, right? A core focus. Doesn't need to be all your focus. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But we see this again and again, right? We talk to people, we talk to lots of people we work with, and we talk to lots of people we don't work with as well. And we get to see the trends. And this is what comes up again and again. I've had countless calls with people who we get on a quick call, get to learn more about where they're at. And they're like, I can't make this business work. I've been trying, sometimes I've been trying for years. And the trends comes up again and again. They're not focusing on things that are $300 plus. Right? They're often focusing on things under that. There's a lot of other challenges and reasons people are struggling to grow their business, but this is one that does pop up quite often. Right? And something that we work with people very closely on during our programs is how to define those things. What can they do that's $300 plus? Okay, so I think it's kind of interesting. Ultimately, the reason is kind of like, okay, sure, but like why? And we think about this a lot at Flammable, like why $300 plus? Like what's going on here? And I think one of the big things is that ultimately it's a numbers game, right? So if you want to have a sustainable business, let's say you want to earn $5,000 per month. You could say 10,000, 5,000, 10,000, everyone's going to be different. Let's say $5,000 per month. Well, every time you sell something, it's going to take energy. And every client you sell to, it's going to take energy. So if you want to make $5,000 a month, that's going to mean if you're charging $10 per item per sale, you're going to have to sell to 500 people. 500, that's a lot every single month, again and again and again. Right? 500 every month just to make your $5,000, and that's at $10. Or let's say you sell stuff for $100. Okay, you've got something, a product or a service that you sell for $100. Well, all good, but now you need to sell to 50 people every single month, and next month, and the month after that. And if there's a slow month, you still have to do it, right? To just earn your 5K. And often you actually want to earn more than 5K. That's just really a stepping stone. So it's kind of interesting because, ultimately, even our clients with large followings, I mean, we work with people occasionally, about 10% of our clients have over 10,000 followers on Instagram, right? Even those clients tend to struggle to make those things that are under $300 work as well. And you'd think like, hey, if I had 100,000 followers right now on Instagram, I'm sure I could be making huge amounts, thousands of dollars every single month from those lower ticket, lower price offerings. That's just not the reality we see. Yeah, yes, some of them are doing okay, but not the numbers that you would think. It tends to be a very small margin of their earnings. The other reason is just that it's really competitive, right? Anything that's under $300 ultimately is just going to be a lot more competitive because it's an easier, lower barrier to entry to sell things that are under $300, right? So it's much more of a competitive space. So a lot of these things that are under $300, I'm going to give some examples soon. Ultimately, there's just so many people trying to do it. So many, so competitive. And many of these things have become more competitive over time as well, right? So this is something really interesting that comes up. What I want everyone here to do is I want you to do a brainstorm right now. What could you do with your current creative skill set for over $300 or pounds or euros, right? I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes for this one. And I'm going to keep talking, but we're setting that timer now. Write down a bit of a brainstorm once again on your own paper or in your own document. What could you do that you could offer for over $300? Now, tends to be more service-based, by the way. There could be some product-based things in here as well. But do a bit of a brainstorm. What could you focus on that would be over 300? Could be 500, could be 1,000, it could be 10,000. That's fine as long as it's over 300. What could you be doing? All right, so a bit of a brainstorm on that. I am going to be going over some different ideas soon, but I want to get you really thinking about what you could offer. And ideally, it's on the current creative skill set, right? The current skill sets that you have. Like, it's not something you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go and study and learn this thing for 6 months and then I can do it. It's like, no, like based off your current skill set. Look, we can make a slight exception if it's something that you think you could do within a month or two after some more focus. Maybe it's pivot your current creative skill set into a slightly new area that you don't have that much experience in, but you think you could kind of pick it up quite quickly. Great, you can do that too. But it's kind of something that you could really be offering to a paying client within a month or two, or already. Right, and don't overthink it. There could be lots of data ideas here too. It's just really getting some ideas down on the sheet. What could you do? What are the options? Even if you're not excited about the idea, write it down because it might actually give you some inspiration for something else. Cool. Let's give everyone a little bit longer. Okay, and anyone here that is here live, I know there's people watching the recording today as well. Can you just pop in the chat, anyone that's here live, one thing that you think you could do that's $300 plus? Just pop that in the chat. What's something that you think you potentially could do, right? That's $300 plus. Just pop it in the chat. Get some ideas brewing there. What could you do with your creative skill set that would be $300 plus? Nice. So there's a few different ideas popping into the chat there as well. Have a read what other people are reading, putting in there as well. Book covers, food catering, course, making furniture, offer a course using Procreate, portrait commissions, book covers, album covers. Awesome. Great. Lots of really awesome ideas in here, right? And I love that everyone here is really thinking about, okay, $300 plus. This is such an important thing. Now, keep in mind that for some of you, I've just given you that question, even if you don't have the answer, right? That's pretty tough for you. Like, I don't even know what to do. That's fine at the moment, right? There's a lot of things you probably can do, but you're going to have to look around. You're going to have to get inspired. And I'm going to be sharing a few more things today as well. Cool. So this is a really interesting activity because it just starts to get us thinking a little bit differently. But the big takeaway from this is that it's really hard to build a long-term sustainable business if you're charging under $300, right? This is the reality based on what we see in the visual creative space. Now, something else that we see is, creative people, they're creative. They have a lot of different ideas, right? What does that mean? You can tend to want to focus on lots of different offerings, right? You're like, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do that, and I could do that, right? Or you might maybe trying to do a whole lot. And it's kind of overwhelming, right? So part of it is actually really focusing that energy and focusing your efforts into a smaller number of areas. Now, I'm not a proponent of focusing on one offering, one thing around your offerings, right? Because I think creative people get bored of that, right? Maybe people outside of the creative space can do that. Most creative people, yeah, they could focus on something for a month and they get bored of it and they're like, I'm going to do something else. And they do something else, they focus on that, and then they move over here and then they move over here. What we tend to see from our work in creative business coaching is that actually having 3 to 5 creative business offerings is a really good idea, right? 3 to 5, not 10, not 1, right? 3 to 5. Whether the 3, whether the 5, well, it's going to depend on a bunch of factors. Do you have a full-time job? Are you caring for children? What is your skill set? What are you excited about? But generally 3 to 5 offerings. right? So focus is important. We hear again and again. I heard someone the other day say, "Oh, like the internet told me you need to have at least 7 offerings." I was like, I was like, where did you read that firstly? And also, like, yeah, isn't that what the internet does say things like that? The internet, right? It's like we hear these things, and the reality is that like having seven different offerings in your creative business, well, you kind of need like a team as well, right? And most people we work with are like a one person creative business owner, right? So actually, what do you need to focus on? 3 to 5 offerings. Now, there's lots of different ways to define offerings. I get that for sure. Do you define things narrow or focused in? Absolutely. There's lots of things to figure out within that, but it's good to understand that generally 3 to 5 offerings is going to be a good way to focus. Most people actually do too much. Now, what's interesting is that what we're saying is that at least some of those offerings need to be $300 plus. I'm not saying they all have to be. They all could be, right? They all could be $300 plus offerings. It's actually a really smart idea. But you might have one of those offerings, or maybe even two, could be under $300. That's okay. That you can do that. What we're saying is that to have a long-term successful business, we see again and again that you need to have most of your core focus on $300 plus. But you could have some other areas that are under. Or you could focus all of your energy on $300 plus. What we're going to talk about next is the under $300 things. And then we're going to talk about the over $300 stuff again. Okay, so in terms of the under $300 things, I'm going to run you through the types of things we tend to see in this space, particularly for visual creators, right? People we work with, the things that pop up. And I'm going to go through each of them in detail and explain to you what the opportunity could be or why you shouldn't be focusing on them or the things that we see. Number one, I'm going to talk about print on demand, right? Print on demand. This is a really interesting one. We see again and again people are focusing on print on demand, and unfortunately, it is no longer really working anymore. This is just our observations, right? And I know my team here, this rant often from me saying, "Oh, yeah," when I'm talking about print on demand, because I get pretty frustrated. We all get pretty frustrated because it's kind of an interesting idea, right? Print on demand, those of you who don't know it, where you put your designs, you create some designs, you put them up online, they get magically put on all of these products and people can purchase them online. Society6, Redbubble, right? It's an amazing idea. The reality is that it's not really working anymore. 5 years ago, it was a bit different. 10 years ago, even more different. But we're just seeing again and again and again, we're talking to people, we're seeing with our own clients, is that it's just not really working anymore. To the point where when people ask me, do you think I should focus any energy on print on demand? They ask me that, I say, no, absolutely not. I'm pretty blunt and I'm getting blunter with it. I think we can probably reach a point within the next year or two where we're just like, no, don't do it. You shouldn't do it. Stop doing it. Now, there's sometimes exceptions. They're getting rarer and rarer. Look, when we see a client who has been doing it for a while, is really passionate about it, really excited about it, yeah, we might say, sure, like you could spend 10% of your energy on it if you really want to. Just being aware, we're not convinced that it's going to be worth your time and effort because print on demand, passive income, well, print on demand, the income is not that passive. You end up putting work in. You've got to keep things updated. You've got to be promoting things. That's not passive to me. Right. And ultimately, we see again and again, we're talking to people who are like, yeah, I'm making $10 a month on Redbubble. I'm making $18 on Society6. Right. These are not the numbers that are going to build long-term sustainable business. Right. I know there'll be some people here watching the recording here live who are like, oh, really annoyed to hear that. Right. This is just the reality of what we see. I'm not saying I wish it was this way. I'm just saying it's what we see. It's become incredibly competitive. Right. And even if it does work, it's a numbers game. You need to sell such a huge volume. Right. The people that we see that it still kind of works okay for generally have been doing it for a very, very long time, and they've got big followings. And even then, those numbers are dropping a lot too. Right. I hate to hear it, but definitely agree. Some things being shared in the chat here as well. I agree. Right. And it's kind of a hard truth, this one. Next one I'm going to talk about is licensing. Right. Now, just to be clear, licensing in this space does still work. Right. Very different from print on demand, but it takes significant time and it's generally not the thing that's going to get you to that long-term sustainable revenue. Right. This is something that, yes, you can do, but it's generally not the thing that's having a big impact on revenue. It's not generally the thing that's helping people leave their day jobs or get that sustainable long-term revenue. We're also just seeing it's getting more competitive over time. It's getting harder to make work. You could focus 30% of your energy on that, right? We have clients that, yes, spend time and energy on licensing and do okay with it, right? But they tend to be spending about 30% of their energy on it max. And once again, it's people that are excited about it, passionate about it. It'll get easier. The larger audience you have, it is easier. Anyone can do licensing. It just tends to be a bit easier if you have a larger audience, right? Because you've got some more credibility. Technically, licensing is kind of a funny one. I've put it under the under $300 category. Technically, you could get payouts that are well over $300. We do have clients that get much higher payouts than that, but it's still reliant on that partner selling in high volume, right? Each individual sale that's happening, you're getting an individual cut, and then you're getting that paid out in bulk. Now, what's kind of interesting is, yes, you can sometimes do and buyouts, or you can have design fees associated with licensing as well. There's different types of agreements around how the royalties work. So once again, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying it's not generally the thing that we're seeing is worth most of your energy focus. When people come to us and they're like, I'm really excited about licensing, we're like, great. How about let's spend 30% of the energy on that, 70% on something else at $300 plus. That's often the strategy we'll go with, something like that. It's going to be different client to client, but it's very good for you to understand this. Other thing, art prints, right? Pretty common one, right? You're an amazing artist, you're an amazing creative, illustrator, designer, whatever space you're in, art prints, right? You can often print them yourself, or you can outsource that. But generally, it's hard to sell them for a higher amount, right? There's always exceptions if we talk about more of the fine art space, but generally art prints, you're selling something for $20, $30, $50, maybe $80 maximum, right? It's getting harder and more competitive to make this work financially as well, right? It's a bit of a numbers game. Yes, a bit easier if you've got a larger following, but still a numbers game. And ultimately, you're selling via, something like Etsy, right? Or your own web shop, right? And these take time to update, keep updated. You've got a promoter. Etsy is a very competitive platform as well. Etsy also has fees, right? A lot of people talking about the frustration around different fees that they have, right? So being very aware that ultimately we hear it a lot. Oh, I could do prints. We're like, yeah, you could spend a small amount of your energy on that, kind of like print on demand. You could spend 10% of your energy on that, maybe 20%. Or if you're already doing it, right, you can spend a small percentage energy on that. But it's not going to be the thing that's going to work long term. I'm going to briefly go through a few other things, and then I want to dive into $300 plus stuff, right? Other things that pop up are products, so like physical or digital products. Once again, often on Etsy, you could have a physical product that you're sending out. That does come with like issues around packaging, sending, courier costs, transport costs, cost to produce if it's physical, a lot of logistics around that. You're also really dependent on those platforms, so things like Etsy, right? And once again, products under $300 are becoming more competitive. Once again, not saying you can't do that, right? Digital products is another area, digital downloadables. And we have clients that do these things. However, what we're saying is that it's not the core stuff that's really helping them to move forward to grow their business long term. And, we see the odd exception. Generally, when we see an exception where someone's like making several thousands of dollars per month off products, physical and digital, or a mixture of both, under $300, well, generally they've been doing it for a very long time. And even then, we're seeing that it's often slowing down. And often they don't tend to be that profitable when the numbers really come down to it, and they just don't seem to be sustainable long term. Another thing I'll briefly mention, private commissions, right? So this is more like things like pet portraits for illustrators, family portraits, house portraits. I think, kind of an interesting area. It's really hard to get above $300. It tends to be like, $300 is often around the price. Sometimes people are like, oh, great, $400, $500. Yeah, sometimes at a stretch. It doesn't tend to be one of the core focus $300 plus things that we recommend, mainly because it's also really time consuming. Right? So yeah, you might be able to charge 300 or 500, but it's going to take you a lot of time and energy. Right? So it could be part of what you spend your time and energy on. Sometimes there's exceptions we see in more of the like fine art space, but once again, you're working with private individuals, you're wanting to be charging higher amounts. So we're not so much going too deep into the fine art space here. Other things we mentioned, education. A few people mentioned in the chat, education stuff. absolutely. Education, it's a good, really interesting area. It could be courses. There's lots of different things you could do. Skills, get on Skillshare, you could do mentoring. What we tend to see with education is it tends to be like 30% of the revenue. If you're really excited and passionate about it, it could become 30% of your revenue, not the 70%. A lot of them do tend to be under $300. Not always, there's sometimes exceptions. And then I will also briefly mention wholesale because we have clients that do wholesale, right? So the whole wholesale space is usually where they've got some sort of product and they're getting that product out to stores. Yes, they're often going to be doing bigger deliveries than $300, but the problem is you're stuck with inventory, you're trying to manage multiple relationships, and once again, it's still kind of based on scale. Where the product is being sold, right? If you're doing, say, postcards, they need to sell on volume and you make a small amount per sale, right? It's volume based again. Once again, you could kind of say 30% of your energy if you're excited about it, if you're passionate about it, maybe if you're already doing it. Now, what I will say here is I'm just giving you a bunch of different ideas for things that are under $300 plus. I'm not saying add them all together to become 100%. Like we would not recommend you do education, wholesale, print on demand, prints, right? Because you're like, oh, well, 10% there, 20% there, 30%. It's like, no, what I'm saying is that you could do one of those things, maybe two, but we need to have a core focus. Usually it's going to be 70% plus on the $300 plus type stuff, right? Really, really important. Cool. Hey, what I want to do now, just as we get a bit deeper into this training, I want everyone to post their Instagram in the chat, right? Put the URL in there. Celeste from my team is going to post ours as well. This is a great chance to get connected with us, but also with other people here. This is a really good way to actually connect with some other creative people. So if everyone can go grab the URL, don't do the ad tag. Make sure you go to like literally open a website, grab the URL and dump it there. Ideally your Instagram. We'd love to get connected, and then everyone else can go through and connect with you as well. Amazing. Thanks, Celeste. We've just posted our Flamboyant Entrepreneur one in there. If everyone that's here live can just post into the chat, I know everyone's searching through and finding them and now dropping some in the chat. Amazing. And make sure you go through and follow everyone. Make sure you connect with us. If we haven't yet, we always love to be connected to people as well. I know we've had some chats with some of you and the direct messages in Instagram as well. So lovely to be connected there. Amazing. Okay, so look, what I've gone through so far is really talking about the under $300 stuff, the not valuable offer thing, right? We've talked about how a lot of these things are very, very competitive, and often that's because it's a lower barrier to entry and it tends to be harder to make work because you need to sell so much. It's very volume based, right? You need to sell a lot of units, right? How many things do you need to sell every single month to make your $5,000? Especially if you take off things like costs involved. Right, these delivery fees or production fees or cost to produce. The other thing is that most of these things here, to be honest, are actually still pretty time consuming. Some of those kind of things are like, oh, they're like passive income, like Prince slogan, they're like passive income. And I'm like, not really. Yes, you create your work up front and then you can kind of like sell it again and again. But the reality is that you've got to be promoting it, you could be updating things, you've got to often be doing all sorts of things around that. Sometimes if you are involved in the sending component, right? So they do tend to still involve time as well. Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is the $300 plus stuff, the valuable offers. Because I think this is something that comes up with a lot of people we start working with, or people we're talking to. It's like, okay, Logan, I get it. It makes sense. This is what I'm saying, right? Like a lot of people we're talking to are like, oh my goodness, it's amazing you've shared about that print on demand. I'm seeing that. I've been seeing that for the last 2 years that I've been trying this and I think maybe my art's no good and there's something wrong with me. It's like, no, it's just that it's really competitive. Everyone's trying to do it and you can't charge much. Right? So therefore, actually focusing on the $300 plus stuff is really important. But for a lot of people, they're like, I don't even know where to start. Right? Maybe some of you have got the question, okay, here's what I could do. Or here's the question, okay, I need to do something that's $300 plus. What could that be? So we're going to talk through some ideas. Now, basically, I'm going to take you through some of the stuff we tend to see with people we end up working with. Right. And just be clear, once again, valuable offer. What we're saying is that we think you should spend the majority of your energy on this thing. For most people, that's going to be 70% plus of the energy, 60%, 70%, 80%, sometimes 100% of your energy. We have clients that spend 100% of their energy on offerings that are over $300. Right. So actually, to be honest, the more the better generally. But yes, we have some clients that might spend a smaller amount of energy, 10%, 20%, 30% on something like licensing or wholesale or some sort of product-based thing. but the core needs to be on this $300 plus stuff. Now, it tends to be things like client work, right? Just to be clear, it tends to be mostly service-based. It tends to be more customized, more personalized. It tends to involve more of a relationship build transactions. It's not usually something that is listed on a website that you like click and buy, right? It's usually, these $300 plus things are also often businesses that you're working with, not always. Could be private individuals, private clients as well. But that's just kind of generally, it's going to be more of that custom work, client work, service-based thing. We've seen the odd exception. Okay, so I'm going to briefly take you through some of the things that we tend to see. I'm not going to go into lots and lots of detail here because we don't have lots of time, but I really want to just give everyone a feel of the different things that we see. Some of you might be already doing these things, which is fantastic. Number one, murals, right? Lots of different types of murals in the visual creative space, from sign writing to window designs to full-on murals, indoors, outdoors. People are doing murals in their indoor Airbnbs these days as a way to get more people booking the Airbnbs. You're seeing it in cafes and restaurants, right? I went to a brunch on Saturday here in Richmond, Virginia, and there's outside the cafe, there was a beautiful big mural on the side of the building. Amazing. Right. So those sorts of things are really important. And there's so many different types of murals in that space. We've even seen people getting into signage out front of venues. We've seen people doing more holiday-based temporary murals, or even sign writing or chalkboards. There's lots of different things in the space here. This is a growing industry, and the great thing is you can charge huge amounts for this. Right? We have had clients that we've worked with that have been charging for 20K, 40K, even over 100K for a project in the mural space, right? Kind of mind-boggling, right? So that's one area. Another area is branding, right? So depending on your skill set, particularly if you're in the design or illustration space, branding can be a really interesting area. Yes, could be things like logo design, but also could be lots of different things in the branding space. Often with businesses, there's a lot of opportunities here. There is businesses opening all the time. There are businesses that have terrible branding that need new branding, right? This is something that is an amazing space to be in, and generally you can actually charge good amounts because people that are paying for branding are looking for a return on that investment, right? They're like, if I spend $2,000 on this thing here, well, that's going to help me to sell something in my business. There's a return on that investment. Another thing that we see, editorial and publishing. We work with a ton of people in the editorial and publishing space. So everything from magazines, online and offline, book illustrations, book covers, right? There's a lot of different things in that publishing space and the editorial space, right? Very much an industry that I think sometimes people think, oh, it's dying. It's not dying. It's still there. There's lots of interesting things in that space. Packaging design, that's another big area. I often look around and I'm like, oh, there's so many things in our lives that have packaging and have designs on the packaging. I'm sure all of you can go into your kitchen right now and be like, oh yeah, that's a design, that's a design, that's a design, that's a design. And someone was paid to design those things. Everything from your food and beverage, absolutely, but through to, cosmetics, products, almost everything that we buy these days, product-wise, has some sort of packaging. Right? So there's a lot of different opportunities. And this is for people with design background, illustration background specifically. Spot illustrations is a really interesting area. We work with a ton of illustrators, and this is a really interesting area. So, doing illustrations for everything from social media to websites to, other areas of advertising. There's a lot of different opportunities more in that illustrative type space. Spot illustrations is a big area. Event illustration, it's everything from people, weddings, right? Wedding invitations. There's a ton of stuff. There's people who work just in the wedding industry. We work with people that they design things for the wedding industry specifically, right? Sometimes party events, corporate events. There's a lot of different event-based illustration and design opportunities. And then graphic design of all sorts, right? We work with graphic designers as well, and that's a whole industry in itself, and there's so many different opportunities within that as well. Web designers, we also work with web designers, and that's a really interesting area from, your full page website design, full build, through to just parts of the visual aspects, the branding elements, the logos, the headers, right? Different elements of websites. I could go on, but there's some of the ones that we tend to see. You'll notice that most of these are more service-based, more custom, and more client-based work, right? And this is relevant for a lot of people we work with in the visual creative space, right? Really, really interesting. Cool. So that was the core of what I wanted to cover around the $300 plus things, right? $300 plus things. I'm going to give everyone another minute and I want you to just add to your brainstorm if there's something there that popped out or an idea that popped out that you could be doing, right? So just giving everyone a moment there. If there's something that I mentioned that you could be adding to your list around things you could be doing, don't overthink it, right? You might be like, Logan, yes, I'm an illustrator and designer, but like I couldn't do weddings because I've never done that. Well, you've got to start somewhere, right? And you've probably already got enough of a starting point that you could actually learn a bit more about some of the specifics for that industry and have a first client within a month, right? If you have a background in illustration and design, there's a lot of different things that maybe you haven't done before, you don't have experience in right now, but you could really pivot your skill set, learn some things, and start doing that. Same with murals, right? We work with a lot of people who, yes, get into murals, right? That's one area we work with people on as well. And we sometimes work with people who are like, oh, I'm an illustrator. I've done this and this and this. I would love to get into murals, but I guess that's not for me because I've never done it before. And we're like, well, every single muralist that's ever existed once had a time where they had never done a mural before, right? So there's a lot that you can do to start leaning into a new area of opportunity. Yes, everything from researching, reading up on it, looking what other people are doing, researching online, Googling what's required to deliver a mural, for example. But also, you can actually do a project yourself, do a personal project, right? Can you get maybe a wall in your house if you own your own home, or you can get permission to do that? You could be doing a mural, right? Or you could just be getting a blank piece of wood and doing it, and doing a small mural, right? So there's often things that you can do to start getting some experience, right? And you could be doing things like mock-ups. This is a very common area. Other areas as well, we talk about, book cover design. If you're like, I've never done illustrations design for a book cover before, I wouldn't know where to start. Well, first thing you could do is actually start doing mock-ups, right? Like a mock-up, like a pretend book, and creating a pretend design for that, right? That's a way to get into these areas as well, right? So there's lots of different interesting things with that. Now, what I would love everyone here to do is I want everyone to pop in a takeaway in the chat, right? What have you learned so far from what I've covered around offerings today? I know I flew through some of those areas pretty quick, but I'd love everyone that's here live to pop into the chat. What is a takeaway? What's something that you've learned, found interesting from this conversation around offerings before we move into the next part of today's training? What is something that you found unique, interesting, surprising, maybe helpful? What's something that, I mean, you might even be like annoyed about something that you've heard, like, oh, I can't believe I've heard that this isn't going to work. That's fine. Pop it in the chat. I'd love to hear some observations from the people that are with us live today. And those of you that are not here live, um, take a note, right? If you're watching the recording, take a note down, like write something down. What is something that you've learned? What is something new that you've heard? Something that is different in here. Okay, so I'm just going to read through a few of these that are popping into the chat. Great to open my mind, Bonnie, to other options that are out there. Nice, realizing that I spend a lot of time and effort on the under $300 offering. Right, this is a very common thing that we see, Bonnie. Absolutely, we see this again and again. Thanks for sharing that. Samid, hearing murals are sought after. I want a desire to do them. It's good to know that there may be good demand. Yeah, honestly, like Samid, like growing industry, murals, absolutely, definitely in the UK as well. It's a growing industry. And people are seeing kind of like what I talked about with like the branding stuff is that ultimately it's about return on investment, right? So like someone who has some real estate is like maybe they've got a place on Airbnb. They're like, well, if I invest some money putting a really cool mural inside, well, I'm going to get better booking rates. I'm actually it's an investment. I'm going to make more on that. And I'm going to get a return on that investment. Or the cafes, right? There's a lot of statistics. Cafes and restaurants that have great murals on the side, inside, actually get more people coming. They get more foot traffic, right? And they earn more. So it's a return on that investment. Really, really interesting. Things shared in here. Take action. There's opportunities out there. Brainstorming new possibilities you've never tried before. Focus on 3 to 5 offerings. Yep, cool. $300 plus. Yeah, always worked in service jobs. Yeah, awesome. Lots of good things being shared in the chat there. I absolutely love that. Okay, so now we talked a lot about different ideas today, but we also talked about the importance around taking action based off what you've learned, right? This is really, really important. How will you figure these things out if they actually work? Well, you've got to test them out. You've got to try things. Ultimately, the only way you're going to actually see if some of these ideas work is try, is do it, is try. Like you're going to learn by actually doing things. This is really, really important. Look, you can brainstorm lists, you can come with ideas, we can fill booklets full of notes for many years, but ultimately you've got to get out there and test things. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving away free clarity calls to anyone here live on the call, as well as people watching the recording, with Paul, who's here from the team, one of our coaches on the team, and also Alyssa as well. She'll be joining us tomorrow. I'm literally going to be popping their calendar links into the chat soon so that you can just go in and book a call. It's a clarity call. It's going to really help you to digest and process what you've learned today. And also they'll get to hear where you're at and hear some ideas as well. These calls are totally free. I'd love to get a bunch of you booking these calls on that, because ultimately this is a great way to digest what you've learned and actually get you figuring out what you need to do next as well. So we love being able to give away these calls. We do have limited spots, so I do have some caveats I am going to share with you before I pop those links into the chat. So I just want everyone to listen carefully, because these caveats are really, really important to us. Number one caveat, we need you to be ready to take action now. Right? We need you to be in a place where you're like, I want to grow my business. I want to maybe leave my day job if you have one. I really want to do that. And, 2025 is going to be my year. If you're just like gathering ideas and just like, oh, I'm just kind of interested in learning some information, but I'm not going to implement anything, please do not book that call, right? Because we've got really limited spots. These are for people that are like, I really want to move things forward with my life and my business in this creative space. Absolutely. We would love to get you on a call with Alyssa or with Paul. The second thing that we ask is that you're just open to get vulnerable, open to share ideas. You're open to share where you're at, right? You're willing to be vulnerable. You're willing to be honest and really share, what your dream is for this creative business, and share with Paul or with Alyssa, like what's getting in your way, what are the challenges, and actually being really open to hearing some observations from their amazing experience, right? You must be coachable. Right? A growth mindset is always essential if you're wanting to learn, right? Absolutely essential. And then the third and final thing is kind of just, one thing that we ask, which is that you just commit to it, right? If you book a call today, we don't want you to no show. We want you to be like on video on. We want you to be at a table. We don't want you to be like hanging out with your cell phone, and Paul or Alyssa will get kind of like car sick from trying to talk to you, right? Stable environment, ideally good Wi-Fi, ready to take notes, right? Not just hanging out in the car. We really want you to, really be focused to use their time. Really, their time's very valuable, and we've only got limited spots. We definitely don't want to muck them around. So the thing I ask anyone that's here live, if you can just type in the chat, if you agree, you could say, sounds good, that's fair, that's reasonable, yep, agreement, happy, okay, good. If everyone that's here can just type something in the chat just to agree, that we'll make sure we really value Lester and Paul with this, just as I go and grab their chats. Thank you. Yes, agree. Oh yeah, sounds good. Fair enough. Yep. Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop both of their links in the chat. Now, the ask here is that you can book with either or. Please don't book a call with each of them, like with both of them. This is only one call, just be clear. So up to you who you go with. There's Alyssa's link there, and then I've popped in Paul's as well. It's probably going to be more availability based for most people. Alyssa will tend to have times more in the mornings. For those of you in Pacific time zone, you're probably going to have better luck with Alyssa's chat there. Have a look through, see what you can find. If you can't find one on Alyssa's, try find one in Paul's. We do ask that you book it either this week, next week, or the week after. Thanksgiving, those of you in the US, we get it. If you can get one in tomorrow or the next day, we've got some times there. Otherwise, next week or the week after is totally fine. But soon is actually better, because we really want to make sure that you actually do digest things as soon as possible. The longer you leave it, the more you're going to forget from today's call as well. Cool. Perfect. Amazing. Okay, good. Fantastic. So go through, click those links. I'd love it if you can just click that link and just book in a time now. Just pop that open now. Once again, we've got those caveats there for that. Cool. Yeah, Sherry, you've already got one booked in. You're all good, so we don't need to get another one on there. That sounds good. Perfect. Cool. And I'm just seeing some people booking some things in, which is fantastic. Okay, cool. Now, today is not the final day. Today is actually day one of the 3-day Creative Business Summit. So, honestly, we have lots to cover tomorrow and lots the next day. So, just a reminder that tomorrow is going to be all about mindset, right? Tomorrow is going to be all about mindset. And honestly, we are so excited about tomorrow because we're going to be sharing some really powerful things. Even if you're like, oh, I think my mindset's pretty good, come along, you're going to learn even more. Right. Day three, we're going to be diving right into pricing as well. What I am going to do now, I'm just going to pop our link into the chat for the sign up for this. You are all signed up for it already. You're going to get the information. You're going to get the reminders already. But if you have a friend that you'd love to come along based on what you learned today, send them that link. Grab that link, send it over to them and say, hey, come along. It's free. You're going to have some fun. You're going to learn some things. Day two is going to be powerful mindset. Day three is going to be all about offerings. Amazing. I'm super excited. I think, it's been really good to see the engagement in the chat today and all these good things. We have some good things planned for tomorrow as well, to make sure you do come along. We're going to wrap things up there. Thank you. Thank you, Art Neo. Yep, it's been great. It's been useful. Amazing. Thanks, Samid. We're going to wrap things up for today. Thank you, everyone that's sharing things in the chat as well. Looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow as well. And make sure you get those calls booked in with Paul or Alyssa.